All right, folks. I want to talk a little bit today about a topic the NFL wishes you didn't know about and wishes would go away. And that is a topic of race norming. Now, what is race norming? Well, to give you a little bit of background, several years ago when the NFL settled the class action lawsuit regarding brain injuries suffered by former players, part of the evaluation for whether or not players would receive monetary compensation for injuries they sustained while playing football involved the race of the players. That's right. The NFL, which claimed to be all in for Black Lives Matter and wanted to end racism and fight discrimination and is all about equality, was actively engaging in racism up until, I don't know, the last year, the last 6 months. So a rudimentary explanation of race norming is when players were evaluated for their cognitive ability, black players had to score far lower than non-black players in order to be considered damaged. The thought behind that being that their cognitive ability started out lower. So therefore, in order for them to be considered damaged, they needed to be far lower than non-black players. That's kind of a textbook definition of racism. But you're not hearing very much about this. There's stories out there. It's barely being touched by ESPN, by CBS. The only articles I could find on ESPN's website about it were just reprinted Associated Press articles. They don't even have their own staff covering it. Well, why do you think that is? ESPN is in bed with the NFL. They air NFL games. A big part of their overall coverage is covering the NFL, so they don't want to upset the NFL. Now, they went wall to wall. They went wall to wall when decade-old emails from John Gruden, who wasn't even an NFL employee at the time, supposedly said some mean things in private emails that were conveniently leaked. Oh, but ESPN was wall to wall. John Gruden's a horrible guy. He needs to be fired. Said Stephen A. Smith. Said Max Kellerman. You don't see them taking the same stance on actual racism. Where's the calls for Roger Goodell to be fired? He certainly knew this was happening. Certainly didn't have a problem with it until it actually got called out by some of the players who were being turned down for monetary compensation. So I just want everybody to think about that. When you put on ESPN and you see guys like Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman, or guys like Peter King, who I think is on NBC, they may be allowed to have their own opinion on who the backup tight end for the Bills should be or what the Packers should do with Aaron Rodgers moving forward. But on issues that really matter, on cultural and societal issues, they're not allowed to have their own opinions. They're only allowed to have the corporately stamped PC opinions. So you're not going to get authentic coverage from people like that, and it's a clear double standard. This should be a much bigger story than it is, but the NFL has their hooks in a lot of these organizations. Contracts are up to be renewed. ESPN makes a ton of money off the NFL. A lot of the networks make a lot of money off the NFL. CBS, Fox. Where are you going to get real coverage on this? It's being buried. Where's Colin Kaepernick on this? Where's all these athletes that were taking a knee supposedly against police brutality and racism? There's just complete silence on this, which is actual racism. I mean, I know that word gets thrown out a lot, but you actually had it here, and this was affecting people's lives. People who suffered brain injuries and can't hold a normal job or can't live a normal life were seeking a few $100,000. In some cases, depending on the severity, it might run into the low millions, just so they could live their life in a respectable fashion after suffering severe injuries playing for the NFL. So it's a very interesting thing, the priorities of some of these organizations. Mean 10-year-old emails, worst person in the world, got to be fired. Judging people literally based on their race, and in this case was disproportionately affecting black players, nothing. So what do you all think about it? Should this be a bigger story? I'll see you on the next one.